So tonight we have the award-winning author, poet, and international human rights activist, and adjunct assistant professor at City College of New York. Tonight we'll be discussing your beautiful poem that we asked that you put together for Juneteenth, called Juneteenth Reparations. And we'd like you to open the conversation with a moving opening from the poem, if you can.
Okay, before I do that, can we just say what happened today in Congress?
Yeah,
The president. Okay, well, the president of the United States signed a Juneteenth bill, which now means that all of the states in the U.S. Are to recognize it officially.
yeah.
Tomorrow, for all federal workers, is a national holiday. So that's a good thing. Sure, I'll be glad to read you and thank you so much for inviting me on. I'll be delighted to read um, the opening stanza.
Yes, please.
Um, Anchored across the plains some thousands of miles away, the eagle lost its wings, and the homing pigeon detoured northwards with the message that Lincoln's proclamation had freed the enslaved. Scorched earth embraced the feet of children, still picking cotton, their thirst relieved by a black mother's finger frosted with her own saliva.
Can I ask? Most poems are full of metaphors. You open with that strong imagery about the eagle and homing pigeon. Tell us the meaning behind that.
Sure. Well, the indigenous people recognize the eagle as a very powerful and spiritual bird. However, the history of the American eagle being chosen as a symbol on the seal of this nation, um, it's a signal that purports to symbolize boldness, strength, independence, and determination. And even Benjamin Franklin, who, by the way, was a slave owner himself, he didn't like that idea of using the eagle as a symbol of the United States, as the emblem. And he said that he wished that the eagle had not been chosen as representation of this country because, in his words, the eagle has no moral character, that it doesn't get its living honestly. And he even talked about how the eagle will perch, it'll labor, particularly at those who are fishing, it'll lurch, and then it will eat its prey. And that's a coward way of looking at the bird. Okay, so the thought of those who they once held, sold, bartered, and what have you, to me, and I've never viewed that as something that we should be glorifying. So that's one reason why I chose the eagle as a symbol. The other was the homing pigeon. Well, the homing pigeon, actually, the history of the homing pigeon in the United States goes back to before the Civil War, and they would use them to carry messages. And so the metaphor there is that the homing pigeon lost its way once the Emancipation Proclamation was announced by Lincoln.
Right, it lose its way because they didn't figure it out. The slaves didn't understand that they were free until 2 years later, correct?
That is absolutely correct. So in my poem, I really focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll read a little bit of that. In the state of Texas, along the Brazos River and the Galveston town, the slave market flourished, fertile ground worked by the enslaved Black women toiling in the sugarcane and cotton mills and the kitchen and hotels created fortunes for the owners. So there are documents of slave transactions in Galveston, Texas, like the human traffickers of today, namely identified as those who committed this horrendous crime against humanity, some of whom descendants claim the surnames of Ballinger, Briggs, and Houston, Kaufman, Mills, and Austin, and the Bible-toting Charles Sayre, who owned 24 slaves and 6,000 acres of land. And meanwhile, ships kept on sailing from Galveston ports to Boston, New York, Charleston, Richmond, Europe, and Cuba too, transporting bales of cotton, sugar, and molasses. Black labor extracted, black labor resisted, broken and beaten, whiplash backs. They all tell the story of how wealth was created. These massive plantations flourished, insurance companies were built, and slavery continued in Texas.
Wow. Wow. All writers have a process that carries them to finish the works. Can you share a stanza that may have moved you to continue writing this and writing this process?
Sure. Well, in my preparation for writing political social prose, I always strive for accuracy in referencing historical dates, moments, and
Right.
hours that speak to our resistance and survival as a people. So in this case, I was against thrust into reckoning these painful memories. So, that was critical to how I formulated the imagery, the context of the poem, and I think one of the most from that um, the stanza that I focus on is where I say that black men's bodies hanging from trees, green moss below, encrusted with blood, scenes replicated throughout the South by the losers who in their hatred cut fingers, toes, genitalia, and other body parts as souvenirs from the cadavers. Some left, others wandered the horizons throughout and beyond, looking for loved ones, lost families, daughters and sons, and those who stayed were jubilant, and that history frames scenes of celebrations.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful and sad at the same time. If I can. Um, what do you want what do you want to leave us with? Like, what do you want us to take away? Can you read a part of your poem that issues a call to action?
Sure. But before I do that, again, I would like to just reference one of the Texas state representatives who said that this date provides us with some high notes to
Mhm.
internalize as takeaways, right? And Representative Edwards said that every year we must remind successive generations that the events of Juneteenth triggered a kind of series of events that one by one defines the challenges and responsibilities of successive generations. And that's why we need these holidays. And from that perspective, I wrote, then as planting season was over and the crops had been gathered, 2.5 years later, a long march and endless detours anchored across the plains from some thousands of miles away. On horseback, this time, General Granger casually rode into Galveston and announced on June 19th, 1865, all slaves are free. And as we said, some left, others wandered the horizons throughout and beyond, looking for loved ones, lost families, daughters, and sons. And those who stayed were jubilant. History frames scenes of celebrations, but reparations are still a distant dream to be fought. We must make real as the central demand. This would be the ultimate praise song for our ancestors.
So, as you know, uh, June is Black Music Month.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier that Black Music Month lifts up her stories and his stories, relevant in the music and sustaining the way in which music is a part of our cultural DNA. What Black music or musical artist most speaks to your heart and to your soul?
Well, obviously, in relationship to Juneteenth, there's this correlation by celebrating Black Music Month. because our music has been a tapestry
Mm-hmm.
where over time it's woven into our sorrows, our oppression, our strengths, our love, our struggles, and our resistance. So it's been stolen, it's been rebranded. But generation after generation, Black music is reclaimed in all of its different forms. And some of my important musicians, lyricists are, let's go back, Nellie Lutcher, who's a
Mm-hmm.
jazz musician, Big Maybelle, Etta James, Aretha, Nina Simone, Valerie June, Josephine Baker, Aminata Moseka, Abby Lincoln, and one of my favorite contemporaries is Andre Day.
Anja Day. She's
Yes,
amazing, isn't she?
yes, she played the recent voice actress in the last Billie Holiday musical.
Yes, yeah, and she did a great job at it. Uh, so I want to ask our viewers a question. You know, we have a little bit of viewers there. I see y'all. uh, uh, Tell us who your favorite Black musical artists are, past or present, that speaks to your heart and your soul. And just, include that in the comments. Um, Before we actually leave, I do want to mention that, and we talked about this earlier, your book, Fidel and Malcolm X Memories of a Meeting, Black Classic Press, that has been cited as an excellent portrayal of bringing together primary accounts that highlight the significance of the 1960 historic meeting between the two leaders. I just want to make sure that we put that in there, get that plug in there real quick.
Thank you. Guess what? I see that a friend of mine has
Yes,
come
Gwen.
to us from Cuba.
Someone
Yeah.
said, Alex said Bill Withers. Gwen says Sarah Vaughan. Um, Alyssa says Nicki Minaj. Hey Chase. Chase says Etta James, Nat King Cole, and Questlove. Those are the people that influence her. Rosemari, I really, really appreciate you coming on tonight. This is our first table talk Thursdays. We're going to continue this every Thursday. I have been appointed the host. My name is Mashiva King. I work with SRP Unerased with Gwen and our phenomenal team. I want to thank you so much for coming on and joining me for this first live. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure for me being
And
here with
hopefully
you.
you can come on again. We can talk in depth about your books.
Sure, I'd be glad to. All right.
Thank you so, so much. Have a great evening, everyone. SRPUnerased.com. That's right, Alex. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. And don't forget to stay tuned next Thursday for another guest.